So winning $500 for me was winning too much. I've won enough, according to BetMGM. Pace, have you won enough on BetMGM? And how much was enough?
So it sounds like you look a lot like Tom Brady, Shane. I think it's a huge compliment.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Lines, the only podcast purifying the sports betting industry. Remember to like, download, subscribe, follow us on all the socials at InPlay Live. If you want to see what InPlay Live is all about on the inside, we've got that promo code for you, Behind the Lines, all caps. All right, welcome back to Andrew Pace, the founder and CEO of InPlay Live. Pace, you're back from Hawaii. You made it back just in time for the Super Bowl. And on today's show, we are recapping the big game. We will give you some of the betting takeaways. We're also going to talk about trendy MGM ad featuring a Super Bowl and NFL great Tom Brady. We're also going to get to a brand new sports streaming service that's in the works. So all of that on today's show. But Pace, how was Hawaii? And you made it back just in time for the game. How was the Super Bowl party?
Oh, awesome. Amazing vacation. A hell of a time. It's interesting being on Hawaii time. So if you guys don't know, they are 2 hours behind Pacific time this time of year. They don't do the daylight savings, so they become 3 hours behind in March once we spring forward. So from a sports betting standpoint, that means that a lot of those 7 o'clock Eastern games, which are the early slate of the night games on any given weekday, those are coming through at as early as 1 o'clock in Hawaii. And your typical NFL Sunday would start anywhere from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. depending on the time of year. And college football starts at 6 or 7 in the morning there. So it's a bit of an adjustment from a sports betting standpoint, but amazing place, and it's more of a 9 to 5 there than it is a nighttime thing, betting on sports. So I was kind of getting used to it a little bit. I was like, you know what, I think I could do this from here and just maybe leave Vancouver behind me. And of course, came back to Vancouver to just like absolutely pouring rain, but it's beautiful today. So it's great.
There you go. It might be hard getting all the books in Hawaii. I don't know what their situation is like.
Yeah, you got to go offshore there.
Right.
Offshore, and we were talking to one of the bartenders that was working at the Fairmont, and he said that he had a couple bookies there. So there's always opportunities.
Well, as I mentioned, you made it back in time to host a Super Bowl party at your place, and in time to have the live stream for the InPlay Live community, and we all got to sit back and just watch the greatness that is Patrick Mahomes. I mean, I can't think of anything more fun in the NFL right now than to watch this guy do what he does on the biggest stage imaginable. It's just something to behold.
You know what's actually interesting, though, is so the Niners are up 10. I think, were the Eagles up 17 at one point last year? I know they're up 10. I know they're up 10.
They got up. They definitely got way out in front, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously we saw him with the crazy comeback. That was against Tug. Deshaun Watson. This was a few years back, but he's down 24-0 against Houston in the playoffs. When the Niners were up 10, I was just thinking to myself, like, they're just not really up. Like it felt like almost all game they could have really put the game away, and they just never did. So you got to credit the Chiefs defense for that. But then when it comes time to get the job done, is there ever a doubt with this guy Mahomes? I think there's he just gets it done. 4th and 1, out of the shotgun, down 3, Super Bowl on the line. He fakes it to Kelsey and runs it himself. Like, you know, it's just one of these things where he's just the guy to get it done. And then they had a 3rd and 10, and they threw the ball to Rashee Rice on that same drive. Which actually got them into field goal range to set up the tying field goal, of course, to go to overtime. It just clutch.
Yeah. It's just, unbelievable. It's funny too. In the post game, the game winning touchdown, Mahomes to Mecole Hardman. And I don't know if you heard this, but Hardman talking about it right after the game there. And he goes, I just caught the ball and I blacked out. I just couldn't help but laugh because I was thinking to myself, I'm like, that sounds about right for Mecole Hardman, a guy, who if the ball is coming to him, he's about to catch it. I could just see him blacking out with all of the drops that he typically has in his career. But he caught that one and won the Super Bowl with it. So, I mean, hey, kudos to him. Hats off. Well done, Mecole Hardman.
Yeah,
Not something I would have expected.
Yeah, we have a nickname for him at In Play Live that's been pretty prominent. We call him Hard Hands, and we have that nickname for a few different people. But he's kind of, because the name Mecole Hardman, hard man, so hard hands. But yeah, he got the job done when it mattered, and he was actually really clutch in the playoffs. When I know he got traded and came back, but he was pretty clutch in the playoffs for them in previous runs. So he's done well when the moment has mattered most. Yeah, we had some fun things going on. Like obviously every Super Bowl party is different, but we do a in-room prop sheet. I got a basketball hoop, so we do like all these basketball shot contests throughout the day, and then we were betting on everything, man. So like first couple people show up, and as soon as they show up, you have to buy in to my Super Bowl party. So when you buy in, you get a stack of poker chips, In Play Live poker chips as well. So it's a sponsored party. But when you buy in, each one of these chips is worth $5. And before you know it, there's just a couple people there, and we're already laying chips down on who's the next person to walk through the door, what team jersey they'll be wearing, like all these things. So like there was a moment where everyone was there except two people. So everyone was betting on who would show up next, but it was a couple. So when the couple shows up, will he be chivalrous and get the door for her? Who will step through the door first? And you just watch them show up, him hold the door for her. She doesn't walk through the door. Then he walks through because she didn't take the chivalry, and the room just erupts because the room's split. Half the room's on her, half the room's on him. So like,
that's awesome.
It's not that I think honestly that is the beauty of the Super Bowl. And I think that is born, and this is kind of tooting the sports book's horns a little bit. It's born in all the props that you can bet on in the Super Bowl. So in my party, it transcends beyond the lines of the sports books and into the hands of the room. So like one of the worst bets yesterday was there was a guy in the room that said there would be more than 5 fumbles in the game, but that they didn't need to change hands. So as long as a player fumbled the ball, and I think he won in the third quarter. It was just the worst bet to take. Like the underside of that is such a good bet, and he won in like the third quarter. So, but yeah, lots of fun stuff like that going around. And yeah, I mean, I've always said this, it's a celebration of the game. So, the 2023 NFL season is behind us, and hopefully a lot of people, obviously there's going to be a lot of fans that are really upset. I try to coach people out of thinking that way and get them into the mindset of watch the game, enjoy the game. If some value presents itself, great. Don't worry about betting on anything before the game starts. I know there was a discussion in last week's episode that I wasn't on about the under, which actually became sweaty with the new overtime rules. So
very sweaty.
Had it have been a field goal back and then a walk-off touchdown, the pregame over would have cashed, which is just crazy. But drop all those pregame bets. So shout out to that under from last week. But drop all those pregame bets and just focus on value. And then if you're going to a Super Bowl party, focus on just having fun and celebrating the game. And it really changes your approach to this like be all end all. I've got, all these celebrities putting millions of dollars on one side of the game. You just don't need to do it that way. And that's the approach we've taken for a good few Super Bowls. Now I didn't play live and done exceptionally well on those games as a result.
Yeah, and yesterday was no different. I mean, the team at In Play Live sort of collectively should have come out looking pretty good after that game. As you mentioned, the under that was discussed on last week's episode of Behind the Lines and was sort of out there for the entire world. But There were some calls made on the live stream as well that cashed. Mahomes over on rushing yards. That was a big one. I think that was an awesome hit right there, because I think we took it at halftime and it won by halfway through the third quarter, something like that. I think he ripped off like a 20-yard run or something, and boom, sealed the deal there for us. And the other one in that third quarter too, we took the minus there, right? Chiefs minus a half, and again, that was another one where they got the ball, they scored, and then we thought we might have a sweat, on the way back with San Fran driving down the field, and instead it ended up being Chiefs ball. The San Fran side muffed the punt, right?
Right.
Yeah, it ticked off Buddy's foot, and when Chiefs had the ball back right away. So it was another one that was kind of no sweat.
Yeah, and a huge momentum swing in the game.
That was a big moment. Yeah.
And you take that away, and you take the McCaffrey fumble on the opening drive away, and you really do kind of envision this: could the Chiefs be able to come back type score that could have transpired? But again, credit the Chiefs defense for how well they shut down those Niners. And Brock Purdy, I do really like this kid. I do. He was I'm sorry, some people are going to be like, oh, haters, all this kind of stuff. The guy was a pylon out there. Whatever stats you say he has, a lot of it is not in the moment where you really need him to perform. And I hate to say this because he had a great season, and I really do want him to do well, and I do think he can. But he reminded me of Jimmy Garoppolo in that game.
Not really a comparison you want. I'm glad you brought that up though, because I made a comment to my group of friends in my fantasy football league sort of shortly after the game was over, and I said to them, I'm like, the intensity difference between Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes was night and day in that overtime. Like you saw Brock Purdy walk into the huddle, and he just had this sort of expressionless face, and he's listening to the call, and nothing on there. And then I think he just gets into the huddle and he tells everybody the call, and it was just very sort of muted. Whereas you see Patrick Mahomes, and he's yelling at everybody, and he's fired up as they're driving, and he's just, he's got that sort of, Patrick Mahomes energy going, right? Where you just know he's coming down the field and winning this game, and there's nothing anyone's going to do to stop him. And it was just, that intensity level, and here you are in the Super Bowl, like, you think you're going to try to really kind of bring it. And I just didn't see that from Purdy in that moment in particular.
Yeah, I think there's something about Purdy's energy, though, that I actually really like. A lot of people know he's extremely religious, but he leading up to the Super Bowl, he was referencing Psalm 23 in a media interview. And I'm not necessarily the most religious person, but the Psalm itself references that I have everything that I need. So it's a mindset thing. And I think that what that is not freaking out, not getting angry, staying level-headed and saying, I have everything I need. I'm calm and I'm going to go perform based on that. And he embraces and embodies that in a big way. Now, when it comes to overtime in the Super Bowl, leadership and energy kind of go hand in hand, because who do we think of when we think of the Super Bowl? Over the last 20 years, we're gonna start talking about Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
Look at his energy and intensity, and again, Mahomes' energy and intensity, and then also, of course, with that is the mindset part of it. So I do want Purdy to do well. I do think he can. I do think he can be great, but he missed Debo for a TD. He missed Ayuk for a TD. Both of them were open. I just don't think he was good enough. And it's just that simple.
Yeah. Now, on that topic of not being good enough, I think we have to bring up this this report that came out today, and some this was on the Score, and I couldn't really believe this at first, but then I think back to all of the coaching mishaps we see all season long, and it's sort of like, yeah, of course. Of course this is a situation. But let me just kind of, bring it, our audience up to speed a little bit if they haven't seen it yet. But basically, the San Francisco 49ers were not prepared for overtime. So here are some of the quotes, and I'll read them to you. This first one here is from defensive lineman Arik Armstead. He said, "I didn't even know about the new playoff overtime rule, so it was a surprise to me. I didn't even really know what was going on in terms of that." Okay, like that's a problem right there. Kyle Juszczyk, Juice, one of our faves at In Play Live. We love this guy, and here are his comments on the overtime in the regular season versus playoffs, thinking it's the same. He says, "I guess that's not the case. I don't really know the strategy." Coach Kyle Shanahan, here's a quote from him. "None of us have a ton of experience with it, but when we went through all the analytics and talked to those guys, and we just decided we wanted the ball third." Let's just pause and think for a moment. There was no third possession in that overtime because it wasn't guaranteed to begin with. On the KC side of things, though, one of their defensive tackles says, "We talked through this for 2 weeks, how we were going to give the ball to the opponent if they scored. We were going to go for 2 at the end of the game. We rehearsed it." So, I mean, you have two complete polar opposites here where you had KC that talked about the overtime rules, walked through it regularly, rehearsed their plan, and had it completely thought out. And you have this other side on the 49ers, didn't know the rule change, didn't understand it, didn't really plan for it. And it makes me think for a moment, Kyle Shanahan is one of, I think we would probably agree that he's one of the higher level coaches, one of the typically more smarter coaches that tends to make better decisions on a more regular basis. But we see so many bad coaches out there and bad coaching decisions. And it just made me think, geez, these guys really do need a common sense coordinator. Even a guy like Shanahan needs a common sense coordinator. How could you not plan for overtime or at least think about it and strategize a little bit? I can't believe it.
Yeah, one of the things that we find funny sometimes at In Play Live, because this podcast so far has kind of been about wrapping up the NFL season. Well, we bet on the CFL at In Play Live, which, if you guys don't know, is the Canadian Football League, and there's a lot of humor associated with it. And the thing is a lot of the players, if not the great majority of them, they actually have jobs on top of playing in this league because, or they have jobs when the season isn't on, because they need some more income on top of what the CFL salaries are. They don't know a lot of the rules, and the rules are weird in the CFL. And we'll make fun of it because we will know them to a certain extent, but even sometimes they get a little bit confusing for even avid watchers. Now, I don't find it funny when we get to the college football level in American football when coaches don't know the right things to do. I don't find that funny. They're multi-million-dollar salaried coaches. In a lot of cases, some of the coaches make more in college football than they do in the NFL. And there's a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of issues. There's a lot of analytics that are not brought into the discussion. And then there's this new wave of analytics, which tells you what to do in certain down and distances based on probabilities and not actually based on a whole series of other things like situational awareness or maybe game flow. Like 4th and 3, it tells us to go, but we're just not playing good offense. And we can take 3 points that are really important right now that the analytics won't factor in, right? And then you look at this storyline from the Super Bowl. So what is Kyle Shanahan saying when he says we'll get the ball third? Well, what he's saying is we score a touchdown, we score a field goal, and that is exactly answered by our opponents. And then we get the ball back where a field goal or a touchdown wins the game, right? And of course, these overtime rules were put in place because of the Chiefs-Bills game where we saw the Chiefs walk it off with a TD. They actually didn't make the Super Bowl that year in the divisional round against the Bills. So this is kind of the first time that it came into play. Now, in this particular case, it's a bit of a moot point because of the fact that it didn't matter. Field goal, walk-off TD would have been the same as regular season. It would have ended. Now, The difference here is remarkable preparation from one coach versus a squad who wasn't ready for the situation. And regardless of how it all transpired, that speaks huge volumes to the Chiefs and to Andy Reid and to Patrick Mahomes versus Shanahan in this particular spot. Now, going back to college football, overtime rules are totally different from the NFL. You start from the 25-yard line. Each team gets a possession for the first 2 overtimes, and then it goes to that new weird rule where they just do 2-point conversions over and over again until someone eventually wins the game. We talk about this like crazy in college football, but if you get the ball as the second possession and you're down 7, the probability of you winning by going for 2 is much higher than going into the second overtime, and no coaches do it. We just read and saw that the Chiefs were planning to go for 2 had the Niners have scored the opening drive touchdown to put the game away right then and there, where you do not give your opponent, quote unquote, the ball third. The game is won or lost on that PAT try. So again, huge level of preparation and already ready for that similar analytics scenario as we've seen in college football not be executed on by coaches time and again. So just credit the Chiefs, credit preparation, and for all of these multi-million dollar players and coaches, the fact that they don't know the rules is crazy. I felt like, so I was explaining the rules in my room to the less prominent football fans yesterday as we entered overtime because they didn't know. But to not know and be in the league is nuts. It is nuts. I'm sorry.
I don't understand. How can you make as much money as you make and not know the rules? Like, it's unbelievable. It really, truly is. And I don't even think that that's the player's fault necessarily because the rules change, but it's up to the coaching staff to make sure that all your players know and understand the rules of the game you're about to play. I mean, it's just, such a basic level. And I think as sports bettors, we often just make the assumption that the coach or the players understand the rules, know what to do in these scenarios, and are going to do the smart thing or the correct thing. And we've seen it so often, Pace, that it just doesn't play out that way. In fact, more often than not, it seems to not play out that way. It's almost like for them to make the right decision is a rare occurrence these days. I don't know. It's just wild to me that this is such an ongoing thing.
Agreed.
Anyway, we want to move on, though, to somebody who clearly always knew the rules, was always prepared, and he has seven Super Bowl rings to show for it. Tom Brady, who is featured in a new MGM ad that I think, first of all, I think the ad is fantastic. I think in terms of it being a marketing tool, it's a very solid ad. It's funny. It's relatable. It features some star power with not just Tom Brady, but you got Vince Vaughn in there. But at the same time, it's, as somebody who has experienced the MGM sports betting platform, it's completely laughable. But why don't we run it for everybody first, and then you and I can kind of talk about it on the other side.
BetMGM is for everyone that loves sports betting. Everyone. But Tom Brady.
Wait, what did I do?
The truth is you've won too much, Tommy. Let others have their turn.
What if I bet in-game parlays and I'm not Tom Brady?
You're in. Now dog me.
What if I bet the money line, but I think Tom Brady is cute?
Well, eye of the beholder. Subjective, but you're in.
Hi, Tom.
What if I used to babysit Tom Brady and he was a little troublemaker?
Well, then you die with your secrets. No one likes a snitch, but you're in.
What if I cried when Tom left?
What if I have a tattoo of Tom Brady on my calf?
As long as you're not Tom Brady, you're in.
Come on.
What if I'm the Tom Brady of spreadsheets?
BetMGM is for you.
Yes.
What if I'm Tim Birdie, 7-time pool champion?
You already know the answer. Why are you putting us through it? With the clothes?
Well, how come Wayne Gretzky's in?
Stop with the questions, Tommy. We're chopping it up here.
Hey, Tom.
Hi, Wayne Gretzky.
Look at that. Your name's on lights.
Why is my babysitter here?
Again with the questions. Please, just enjoy the view.
Download BetMGM. Except you, Tom. You've won enough.
I mean, pretty good, right? Pretty funny. But here's the thing BetMGM is that I used your sports betting platform. I think I won about $500 in profit, and I got limited. So winning $500 for me was winning too much. I've won enough, according to BetMGM. Pace, have you won enough on BetMGM? And how much was enough?
So it sounds like you look a lot like Tom Brady, Shane. I think it's a huge compliment. Well, I mean, so one of the things on Behind the Lines, if you guys have followed our journey, especially our early episodes, was exposing a lot of the practices of the sports books and the betting industry. And since those have been exposed, obviously we try to keep up to date with what is going on. In this particular case, I get rubbed the wrong way because the ad is simply lying to you. Mm-hmm. They say it's the sports betting app for everyone. They pause and say everyone again. And then there's a line later that says, what if I'm the Tom Brady of spreadsheets? And the Tom Brady of spreadsheets means that you are elite when it comes to data management. Like spreadsheets is managing data. Mm-hmm. And precisely what BetMGM doesn't want is people that are winners. Not only that, there are some sports books that you can win quite a bit of money off of that have a reasonable leash, and they will still limit you, but they're comfortable with a certain amount of risk with any given player. And sometimes I wonder with BetMGM how even losing players play there, with how quickly they'll cut you off for making just one pregame bet. So the ad rubs me the wrong way from that standpoint. It's fun. I'm a huge Tom Brady fan, and that part of it kind of makes me smile because it's like, you're too good, Tom, but everyone else can play. That part's funny for sure. But again, it's just another major sports book spending massive ad dollars and massive money on some of the biggest celebrities in the world. You know, Vince Vaughn, Wayne Gretzky, Tom Brady, of course. And all to collect losing players, because if you win there, you will not continue to play. It's everything wrong with the industry. And I wish there was some sort of recourse you could take based on this ad where you're like, hey, they said I could play here and I can't.
Yeah, really, right? I know I can't go back there. I think I could bet $1 on something over at BetMGM. And I know there are many people within the In-Play Live community that have been down on a BetMGM and still got limited and aren't allowed to place any kind of significant wager there, or couldn't, bet enough to win their money back because they just got limited so fast. When it comes to books limiting players, I think they are one of the fastest out there. Like, they will limit you, in a matter of moments. You could be on the site for less than an hour and place a couple of live wagers, and boom, it's done. This ad in that sense is just so laughable. And I think there are many people in our community who are the Tom Brady of spreadsheets and, tried to go and apply those talents and skills that they have at BetMGM. Maybe they made a little bit of money, but I think it's highly unlikely that they made any kind of significant money over at BetMGM because they just limit so quickly.
Yeah, well, people certainly have made a lot of money at BetMGM. I know people that have broken through the cracks and have done really well there, but they still ended up getting limited. But it's actually a really interesting discussion, and that switches us over to the NHL. Gary Bettman was approached in an interview recently, where he specifically was asked about if he knew that his major league partners, and referenced some of these major regulated sports books, that are on the boards on the hockey rink, that are on the ads, paying the league ad dollars, that are official partners of the NHL, and was directly and specifically asked about how he felt about winning players being unable to play at a major partner of the NHL. And I personally believe that his answer was genuine. He turned and he said, I'm unaware of this practice, and it's something that I will look into more. And whether you all these commissioners of all these leagues, they come out and get booed like crazy. Whether you like these people or not is irrelevant. The sports books have a real way about them when it comes to all these practices, where if you are limited, they say it's another department that they have no information about. So it's one company, and all of a sudden we're starting to get this real Elizabeth Holmes vibe, going on here, where everyone's kept in the dark about where they're going to work every day and what's going on behind each individual wall. And I feel like the sports books should be public about those practices, not necessarily, come to BetMGM, we're going to limit you if you win money. Not like that, but with a major partner like the NHL, with regulators, with governments that are involved in the discussion of what it is that they're doing. And it very much appears that those practices, from my personal experience of actually speaking with regulators out of the gate, kind of when things were becoming legalized and were legalized, to that discussion with Bettman, which was extremely recent, it very much appears that they did not know, once this all started, of some of these practices that have spilled over into the regulated market. So again, it's kind of like that clip we ran with Peta Murphy, where you just kind of smile when you see it, because it is shedding light to some of those major people and partners. Does that mean change is going to happen? I don't think so necessarily, but I think it's a step in the right direction when those things are brought to light.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in terms of Gary Bettman genuinely not knowing that that's a practice of the sports books. That clip and that question really kind of you could just see the expression on the face, and he turns to his, the guy next to him, and they're both looking at each other like, huh, what? Like, this is a thing, and they it seemed like they genuinely did not know. And I think that's probably true for the vast majority of people out there in the public. Unless you are actively betting on sports and winning, which is a very small percentage of people out there, especially in the general public, you probably don't know that you're getting limited. And I hope within our audience, we have plenty of people in our audience who have been limited and will continue to be limited into the future, because it means that they're winning. But if you're listening to this podcast and you've never, maybe this is your first time, or you're kind of new to the pod, you will get limited when you win on sports books. And we hope to help you get limited by kind of learning what the sports books do. But at the same time, it's just a part of it. But I think the vast majority of people out there don't know this. And I know in my own circle of friends and my fantasy groups and that kind of thing, I think I'm probably the only person who's ever been limited on a 365, let alone dozens of other books. They all still have their Bet365s going, along with a whole bunch of other sports books that maybe they play on. But I think most people don't totally understand that. And when I tell people that that's the case, they're like, huh, really? How do you, and it's kind of like when we had the guy on from Power Play a few weeks ago, the chief operating officer talking about how, he wants to learn how to get limited on a sports book, because he doesn't, or kind of pretending as if he doesn't know how, but I think he probably does. There's all these people out there that just don't know. And I think it's probably very true for the people higher ups that are making those big time multi-million or billion-dollar deals with the sports books, that they also don't know the practices.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But anyways, cool ad.
A great ad. And I'm sure, who knows, we'll probably see a lot more from Tom Brady doing other fun stuff like that too. I know though that Tom also needs to start putting in some work with Fox Sports, because he's got a major deal with them, right? And I don't think we've seen a whole lot of actual football analysis from Tom, but I think we are going to be getting more in the future. And part of that might be on this new streaming service that was just announced last week. And this sounds like a big game changer, Pace. So we've got Warner Brothers Discovery, ESPN/Disney, and Fox Sports all creating one streaming service to rule them all. And this is a sports streaming service only. So it will include sports networks, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, SECN, ACCN, ESPN News, ABC, Fox, FS1, FS2, BTN, TNT, TBS, and True TV. NFL, NBA, NHL, NASCAR, PGA, Grand Slam tennis, all the sports included on those networks. Pace, this sounds like a one-stop shop for sports streaming.
Yeah, God. It's like the future's here in an extent. Like, obviously, I've referenced previous episodes. We obviously have followed latency through this whole thing. It really looks like we're turning the corner. And these are going to be the solutions for us. And what's great about it is, I think it's no secret that people have seen, my betting setup. This to me is taking a setup like what I'm looking at right now and making it simple that you could put on one computer screen, one iPad, right? Multi-view in one spot with low latency. The technology exists. We know that. And this is just, these major companies finally going, and you know what? It's all about the market, right? The market dictates action. And it does in so many different industries. But all of a sudden you look at, actually, Shane, this one will be close to home for you, but the CTV News here in Canada, the CTV News has just discontinued a whole series of their news broadcasts and has focused on fewer broadcasts and more opportune times, and then cut a whole whackload of their typical news programming. And it's just the cable cutting that's occurring, and the way the market is trending is towards this model. And it is very similar almost to like a blockbuster Netflix type situation, where if these companies don't make these changes and adapt for us to view them this way, they will not even remotely survive. So it's really nice to see from my standpoint where, this technology of streaming sports on a certain platform has existed for a long time, since essentially the dawn of the internet. But it obviously not being consistent, it being illegal in most cases, and now, of course, coming to us in a way that is easily accessible and hopefully low latency.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up the CTV Bell layoffs. I've got a lot of friends and colleagues who lost their jobs because of that. And 4,800 jobs in this latest round from Bell, but this has been something that's been going on for several years with Bell in particular when it comes to their Bell Media division. And, they've been having a lot of problems with that. And, Bell here in Canada, for anybody who's listening in the US or outside of Canada, Bell is like, their primary service is providing your cable, phone, home, internet, stuff like that, and selling you cell phones, right? That is their primary goal, and building sort of the fiber optics infrastructure throughout Canada. I just don't think they want to be in the business of content creation, and that probably has a lot to do with it. But then when we talk about these companies coming together, right? These are big time competitors, Warner Brothers, ESPN, Disney, Fox Sports. These guys are, they've been competing with each other for a long time now. Here they are coming together to, create a solution to a problem that's out there, which is this fragmented viewing, right? Audiences are split up all over the place now. Whereas before you only had a few channels to watch on a TV. Now you've got, channels galore, streaming services everywhere. You can get stuff on your computers and online. You can pirate things very easily if that's the route you want to go. I don't advise people to do that, but we know it happens, and there's a lot of that going on. And at a certain point, you got to say, okay, we got to work together to get what everybody wants in one place. And I think that's what we're seeing here. I wanted to ask you though, Pace, as somebody who does have that awesome TV wall, and you've usually got eyes on just about every game that we're placing wagers on live, or you've got eyes on most of them. How many services do you actually use and pay subscriptions to?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I VPN into some of these US services, like I use YouTube TV. And then I have my cable package, and then a couple other streaming services. Probably, I'd say three but that excludes all the Netflix, Prime, all that kind of stuff. Right. So, no, Prime's definitely one too, because they play Thursday Night Football that I would put in the list. So that would bring it up to 4. And then I have like all the Disneys and Netflix and things like that, but that's not for sports related stuff. But it could be with the way these things are going, right? Like those could be add-ons or existing things. And what I'm saying too, obviously doesn't include like topping up an NBA League Pass or an NHL Center Ice package, like those types of things that I'll have. Those will be add-ons onto the platform. But yeah, about 4 actual primary streaming services for sports. But you could just use YouTube TV. It's getting to that level now. And obviously what you've just brought up is a major competitor to YouTube TV. They won't offer Sunday Ticket, right? Because YouTube TV is the provider of that. Or if they do offer Sunday Ticket, that revenue would be connected through Google somehow, where that revenue ends up going to them in the end. But for the most part, it sounds like you're going to get a great array of sports through this subscription. And there's really, and this is the thing, there's betting with the lines in front of you, which is as important, if not the most important way of sports betting. But then there's the game and what's going on the court, rink, or field. And when you combine the two, you can be a hugely successful sports bettor. And from my standpoint, there's almost no price on a subscription that I wouldn't pay to have access to these games in real time where you can put anything on. There's almost no amount of money from a reasonable subscription standpoint. So, there's a lot of talk when Google took over Sunday Ticket of the cost of Sunday Ticket. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, if this thing is low latency, I don't give a fuck how much it costs. And unfortunately, it was high latency. They have improved it now, and I think it'll continue to get better. But yeah, I mean, I look at some of these companies doing this and I'm like, please, like, bring it on. Let's do this. And don't worry so much about the subscription being expensive for premium users, right?
Well, see, I think that we run into a bit of another issue here, which is the whole conversation around cord cutting is for the vast majority of people out there and a big portion of the public, when it comes to cord cutting, the whole idea is to pay less for the stuff you want, right? And get rid of the stuff you don't, which is, now it's okay. I don't need my cable because all the shows I watch are on one of the streaming services, Netflix or, Amazon or Apple TV or whatever it might be, right? But now, so you cut the cord, but now you got to pay, because I think YouTube TV is like $72 or something like that a month, maybe in that range, I think. And, so if you're paying for YouTube TV and then you got some of these other ones, they all start adding up. Before you know it, you're paying way more for everything than you were when you had regular basic cable. And so I think to, come up with a solution to here, let's bring it all together. Let's put as much sports as we can into one streaming service and charge a reasonable rate. I think is just a fantastic idea. That's great for the average consumer.
Phenomenal. Yeah. Phenomenal. And what I said just now is specific to someone like me or a lot of the members of our community, where they go, I would pay good money for what this would be. But the flip side is bring it all together, have it available to the public for a reasonable cost, and bring it on. Between that and maybe, a Netflix subscription or something like that, so you can kind of unwind and watch some bad TV or, a couple movies or whatever. I think you're set, and hopefully set affordably as well.
Yeah, exactly. And the other side of this too, though, that I was thinking about is the whole, I guess, what do we call it? Integrated sports betting now. And I say this in the terms of ESPN Bet is out there.
Yep.
And I wonder how that's going to work out, where, you'll be on the ESPN site and they'll have the broadcast of the game and the lines for you all on the same platform, right? All in the same space. And we already see it quite a bit. I know, Bet365 had it throughout the NFL season for us here in Canada. I don't know about our friends in the US if they were able to watch games on Bet365, but we were able to do it here this past season, and you've got the lines right in front of you and you can watch the game at the same time. But I think maybe we'll see more of that, once ESPN goes towards this new streaming service. But I think we want to see more of that just generally, right? Across all the books.
Yeah. And that's something that we will see become a discussion of regulators. Mm-hmm. So when you bring major media into sports betting and then become major sponsors of these leagues, and then you go to watch the game, but you have no intent of betting and there's betting lines in your face. We've already seen in Ontario the ads become a major conversation with the regulators. Celebrities no longer allowed to endorse ads in Ontario. And also a major discussion of those regulators was the time of day that those ads could be run. So they didn't want people watching them, on, your kids watching Barney and all of a sudden, McDavid's in their face or Matthews is in their face telling them that they should be betting on the game tonight on BetMGM, during daytime, more PG or rated general times of the day. So those have been major discussions. Regulators will need to be involved when it comes to watching a game outside of a betting platform where there is a potential for lines to be offered on the broadcast. And we have seen that already, right? So it cuts to halftime. They'll say the live odds for these teams to win, powered by DraftKings, and they actually start making some picks. That does affect the viewer. I know people that come to me and talk to me about that are really unhappy. They're not involved they don't bet on sports, and they're really unhappy that they see that kind of stuff. And, that will continue to progress more and more as these relationships build and as some of these major companies do take over the media for us viewing them.
Yeah. I've had the same kind of feedback from people who know, that I'm heavily involved in sports betting. They're like, they're sick of the ads. They're just done with it. And, on top of it too, a lot of people out there might be like, well, just ignore them, but they're everywhere and they're in your face all the time. And, I think, the people out there who are like, oh, I'll just ignore it or whatever, or it doesn't affect me or it doesn't impact me. Well, I'll tell you this, these sportsbook companies wouldn't be spending all the money on these promotional strategies if they didn't work. They do work, right? And they do get people to bet more. And probably oftentimes betting on bad stuff or stuff that, is probably going to lose and benefit the sportsbook long term. And I'm just thinking about the one that this Super Bowl and last year's Super Bowl was Gronkowski's kick of destiny. And the kick of destiny is all I heard about for the past 2 weeks. His second attempt at the kick of destiny, he missed. By the way, in case you missed that, but right, like these things, they just over and over and over and repeated, right, so many times. After a while, it wears on people, especially if you're just an average person, right? And suddenly you might just think, all right, fine, I'll go bet on this kick of destiny. Let's see, right? And it's such a dumb wager to even waste your time with. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah,
totally.
Anyway, now that the NFL season is behind us, Pace, let's say you're an NFL bettor out there and you bet on the NFL regularly, and that's kind of been your thing up until now. Are people lost? Are you lost? I know you're not. You've got a whole plan for the rest of the season now, right? What does some of that plan look like? Give us a bit of a sense of, if you want to keep betting on sports, you want to keep becoming a better sports bettor, but your main focus was the NFL, where do you turn your attention to now?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got March Madness gearing up here in just a couple weeks, so it's a pretty freaking crazy time of the year. In fact, I would argue that tournament week where teams are trying to get into the March Madness tournament at the very start of March, end of February, is some of the busiest days at In Play Live of the entire year, and a lot of fun. And then, of course, NHL and NBA are hitting that halfway point or beyond that halfway point where, teams are starting to get into the playoffs, fight for playoff position. And then, of course, we get into the playoffs themselves. Really great times a year to be betting on sports. But from a football standpoint, we actually haven't talked about this on the show, but the USFL and the XFL merged. So there was two separate non-NFL leagues, and you might be like, oh, those leagues suck or this or that or whatever. The XFL had some good traction last year, some really good excitement. I know The Rock was or Dwayne Johnson, he was a really big part of getting that league sort of promoted. And they've done a couple things really well that I think other football leagues could start looking at a little bit more. But the fact that the two leagues have now merged, that presents opportunity. And this is the thing about sports books. So when you go behind the lines, they desperately want to get similar action in, like they do during NFL season, as the year progresses. So these books are trying to get us to continue to bet, and they're trying to find creative ways for us to do that. So if you continue betting throughout the season, they're happy, especially obviously as a losing player. So hype towards a league like the USFL and the XFL merging is a very real thing. So I'm excited for that myself, because I'm going to be following those leagues. We have a member in our group that's really into those leagues, that does a really amazing job with his calls on that kind of stuff. And we're really excited about, we're really excited about that. And then we already touched on it, but we bet on the CFL, and I love the CFL. That actually excludes baseball. Like when baseball season comes through, I had a great baseball season last year. It is low volume for me, but I find that it being low volume and the time of year mesh nicely together, where, you can pick your spots, not maybe be super, super active and as engaged as you would be with, say, a football game, and get to enjoy some other aspects of life and get to enjoy the fruits of your labor. So, I was just in Hawaii. I got to enjoy some of the fruits of my labor, but go on a couple trips, spend a little bit of money, and then obviously get geared right back up, because before you know it, time flies and you're right back in.
Yeah. Before you know it, it's preseason football again, right? And in August it's here, and it does fly by. It goes really quickly. Big shout out to TC in the group, who is that that person you're talking about. He makes great calls on some of these other football leagues. A superstar when it comes to that. And it's funny that you say baseball and low volume, and you put them together, because baseball is one of the highest volume sports out there. But I think you go low volume on baseball so that you can enjoy that time off, and also dial in only on the very, very best baseball ops, because if you try to do too much in baseball, it can go south pretty quickly, I think, eh?
Oh, big time. Yeah. And I'm not referring to low volume of a sport, and I'm not referring as low volume so that I can do other things. I'm referring to low volume to be profitable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just to dial in on those very, very best opportunities. And we can teach you about those best opportunities at In Play Live. If you haven't joined and you want to join, we got that promo code for you, Behind the Lines, all caps. And along the way, Pace, we'll have the OddsJam tool to help us out, especially as you mentioned, in the weeks coming up here that are just in front of us for college basketball. And as we move towards the tournament, those OddsJam lines really, really help in terms of identifying great opportunities, whether it's middles or arbs or just weak lines. Having that OddsJam tool up the whole time is just fantastic. I'm assuming we can expect to see more of that. And this will be the first season, I think, that In Play Live has it come March Madness time. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So if you guys want to join OddsJam, you can use code InPlayLive or InPlayLive15, and it's a great way to identify the best line that's available at multiple sports books. It scans the lines for you. So again, it takes a setup like the one I'm looking at right here and condenses it into just one screen from the standpoint of screen real estate and looking at all the books. So definitely beneficial in finding long-term value.
Yeah, pretty cool tool all around. All right, Pace, with that, I think that just about does it for this week. Till next week, buddy. Keep eating those bucks.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Lines. Remember to like, download, and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Have a betting story or want to be featured on our podcast? Drop a note in the comments below. And if you want to join In Play Live, use promo code Behind the Lines.